guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Courtney if you are new. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my tips and tricks on how to make some really pretty decorated sugar cookies. So let's get into it.
All right, first things first, what is my sugar cookie recipe? Well, I have been using the Wilton sugar cookie recipe for years. It's my absolute favorite. It's the one that I made when I used to sell my cookies. It's delicious. I will definitely link it down below in the description box for you. I'm gonna take you through the ingredients that you need, and then I'm gonna go ahead and whip up these cookies. So you need some salt, baking powder, flour, sugar, softened butter, egg, almond extract, and clear vanilla. And that's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and whip up these cookies. The directions are super easy. You just preheat your oven to 400. So let's get these cookies made.
I'm going to quickly take you through this recipe, sharing any tips and tricks I have, as well as any alterations that I've made to the actual recipe. The first step is to add softened butter and sugar and beat them together. Softened butter. The best way to get softened butter is to go ahead and leave this out about an hour or two before you want to make the cookies. If you forget, the next best thing is to take a glass container and put a couple tablespoons of water in it. Heat it up in your microwave till it gets nice and warm, then take it out, dump the water out, and then put the container over the top of the butter. The butter does need to be unwrapped, and that will soften it up very quickly. I would not recommend melting or trying to soften your butter in the microwave because it is very hard to get it to where it's just softened and you don't end up with a little bit of melted butter. You definitely want a hand mixer for this, and just follow the recipe as far as how long you beat the sugar and butter together. Once you've added your egg, you're going to add your extract. So here's where I've made an alteration to the recipe. I use 2 teaspoons of almond extract and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Honestly, you could do any combination you want. If you wanted all almond, if you wanted all vanilla, you could. I definitely recommend, though, trying to have at least some vanilla in there. I just think it does definitely make a difference in the cookie, but you don't have to have almond if you do not care for that flavor. Last couple of steps is just to add your dry ingredients, which would be your salt, baking powder, and your flour. Definitely make sure that you just add your flour a little bit at a time, a couple cups, and then just stir it, and then go ahead and add the rest, and then you've got your dough ready to go. The dough is ready to go, and now I'm going to share my tips and tricks for rolling this out. Now, one thing I really love about this recipe is it's no chill. So when you roll it out, I like to use this large baking silicone mat. I will definitely, again, link everything I possibly can down below for you, but you can use any surface. You're going to want to flour your surface, and then you're also going to want to flour your rolling pin. Then you're going to want to take the dough and just kind of divide it into 2 sections and work with that amount at one time. So when you take your dough out, you're going to just kind of pat it into a ball, make sure it's floured all the way around. And then the trick to rolling this out is this. When you take your rolling pin, you want to push with pressure and pull back with nothing. So what I mean is when I'm pushing up, I'm putting the pressure. When I pull it back, my hands are just kind of resting on the handles, and you want to kind of go in different directions. So as you can see, I'm kind of going like, bottom to right, bottom to left, bottom to middle. The middle section is always going to be where it's going to be the thickest. So that's kind of where you need to watch. And it's ideal if you can start kind of in the middle of the dough. If you're a beginner, that's what I would recommend, is always kind of start in the middle and push out. But again, you just want to get it to it's about 1/4 inch all the way around. And then you can kind of take your hand and feel across the dough and kind of feel if the middle is raised up a little bit, and then you need to go back in there and get pressure. So you're just looking for a consistent thickness all the way. And then it's time to use cookie cutters. Now, I have a variety of plastic cookie cutters as well as metal cookie cutters. There's really not much of a difference. Definitely helps to kind of flour the cookie cutters when you punch them down. Now, as far as care for the cookie cutters, you definitely want to hand wash these. The plastic ones you can let air dry, but just remember, if you use metal cookie cutters after you've washed them, you definitely want to dry them all the way because they will rust. crust. So I'm just gonna go ahead and punch these out. Once they're punched out, what I use to bake them is I just use a cookie sheet, and I always put them on parchment paper. And then you just follow the recipe. It's gonna be dependent on your oven, how fast it cooks. So mine go for about 6 minutes, and you want them to cook to where they kind of look like maybe they're not completely done, but a little light brown around the edges is fine, but you definitely don't want full brown all the way.
Here are all the ingredients that you're gonna need for the icing. We're gonna be making a royal icing, and the one I'm using is this one right here from Sweetopia. I'm gonna link it down below along with everything else I can possibly link. You're gonna need powdered sugar, warm water, meringue powder. If you have an egg allergy, I will link a different recipe down for you for royal icing that doesn't include any kind of egg, almond extract or vanilla extract, cream of tartar, and then an electric mixer, there's Bailey, or a hand beater. All right, let's get cracking to make this icing.
This recipe is very straightforward. I only have a few alterations that I do, but the main thing about working with any type of royal icing is you need to make sure whatever tools you're using are super clean and free of any kind of oil residue, because royal icing and oil do not mix. I'm telling you, I know this from experience. So just make sure whether you're using a hand mixer or a mixing bowl, whatever tools you're using, that they're super, super clean and free of any kind of grit or grime. So you're gonna follow this recipe pretty much to the T. The only alterations I have is when it comes to adding the powdered sugar. I do sift my powdered sugar, and I like to add it a little bit at a time. This recipe says just dump all of it in there, but I prefer to just kind of mix it a little bit at a time. And then the other alteration I make to this is just, again, on the flavoring. It's up to you. Good flavorings for icing that work really well with sugar cookies are lemon, almond, or even vanilla. I haven't really ventured out to any others like peppermint or root beer or cherry, but I'm sure they would work just as well if you wanted to try some of those. Let me know down in the comments below if you do kind of venture off and do a different type of flavored icing. I'd love to know. But those are the three I usually always stick with. Usually it's always the almond one though. That's my favorite. Okay, icing time. There's a lot of information in this segment, so I'm going to try to explain it the best I can. So this is the consistency it comes when it's finished. This consistency is what I use to outline and do details on my cookies. There's basically two different consistencies I use. There's this one, and then there's one called flood. That's the one where you basically, that's what you fill in your cookie, your little sections of your cookie with. So let's just start with how I color my icing. I use food gel coloring. I prefer these 100 times over the little, squirty bottles in the 4-pack from the grocery store. I just feel like these work really well. You can put as much gel in there as you want, but just remember, as the icing dries, it will dry a little bit darker than what you're seeing. It is kind of like paint, and you just want to make sure that it's mixed in there really, really well. Now we're ready to go ahead and put some of this green icing in a piping bag. Tip number 1, grab yourself a drinking glass. I'm going to show you what a lifesaver that is as far as filling piping bags. Then you're going to want to go ahead and grab your tip. Now I do recommend for the outlining and details that you do have a piping bag with a tip. My preferred tip is tip number 3 from Wilton. I think it's just like a universal. I really like the size of that one. Sometimes I will use a number 4, but I think the number 3 is the best for outlining and details. And then we're ready to go ahead and assemble our piping bag. The tip to filling a piping bag is to use a drinking glass. So you're going to want to take your piping bag, cut off the tip, and then put your little plastic part inside. Then take the tip and this little white thing, screw it on, and then your piping bag is all assembled. Again, this is for our outlining and detailed royal icing. Then take your piping bag and set it inside of your drinking glass and just kind of wrap it around the edge. This way you have hands free. You can go in there and kind of push out any air pockets and get it stretched out, and you're not trying to hold a piping bag and fill it. It just works wonders. These glasses also come in handy when you are not using the piping bag to fold the piping bag in half and set it in there so it doesn't drip out the tip. Now remember, this icing will go a very long way. So for your bags that you are using for outlining and details, you really don't need that much icing. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in here, and then I will push it down and go ahead and try to get out as many air pockets as I can. And as far as the top, you can twist off the top if you want. You could put a rubber band at the top. You can tie it off if you want, but I have these little purple rubber band things that you just latch on there, and it just kind of keeps the icing down so that it won't squeeze out the top. To outline the cookie, the rule of thumb here is to start close to the cookie, and as you're going around, to kind of hold the tip away from the cookie, and then the closer you get to your starting point, you get the tip closer and closer, and then you kind of just smush it down into your starting point and you're good to go. I've shown you what to do to get your outline in detail. Now let's talk about the flood icing, or the icing that's gonna fill in your cookie. So right here, I've got some white icing that I thinned down. And the way I thinned it down is I took the stronger consistency that I ended up with from the beginning, and you just add a little bit of water at a time, maybe about a teaspoon, stir it up, and what you're looking for is about a 10-second icing. And what that means is you're gonna take your spoon, get a big blob of icing, and as the icing drips off the spoon, start counting how long it takes to absorb back into the icing in the bowl. If it takes it about 10 seconds to get there, then you're good. Then all I'm gonna do for my flood icing is I'm gonna put it in a piping bag, but I'm not gonna put a tip on it because you don't need necessarily a lot of precision with this. This is just what we're using to fill the cookie. And again, make sure you have some glasses because this will drip out the end. So when you're not using it, you can fold your piping bag in half and slip it into the glass, and that will keep the icing from dripping out the bottom. Once you have outlined a cookie, I did want to show you kind of what the flooding looks like. So you've got your cookie outlining done. You take your flood icing. The key here is not to put too much in there. So you kind of just squirt it in your spot that you want it, and then it helps to have some type of scribe tool. See, I'm not trying to make sure I fill every little part of this because the icing will kind of slowly spread just a little bit. And that's how if you put too much, that's how the icing starts to overflow the edges. But this is a little scribe tool. It's a baking tool that I have. But again, a toothpick will work, a bamboo skewer will work, just something that you can spread the icing around. And then if you happen to get air bubbles, use it to pop the air bubbles. I also wanted to give you a tip on how you can get your icing a certain consistency. Let's say you have flood icing, but now you need some more outlining and piping. All you have to do is just add a little bit of powdered sugar at a time until you get it stiffened up. And then let's say the same vice versa, you need more flood icing, then just add water. It's not gonna do anything to the flavor. You can certainly do that and just continue to do that as you need to adjust. So that's why I always suggest just working with icing in batches. Don't do a whole ton of flooding or a whole ton of piping because you can't always fix it if you need to. So just remember those two things. To make it stiffer, add powdered sugar. To make the icing a little bit looser consistency, just add some water. Let's get into a few easy techniques that will make you look like you really know how to decorate cookies. So here I'm just kind of very quickly flooding this little gingerbread man just to show you how to do the flood and flood technique. So I outlined it, then I just flooded it with some brown. As soon as I get it spread, you're gonna pick up the second color that you wanna put in there, and you're going to make lines of the icing with a little bit of spacing in between. Once you've done that, you want to take your scribe, or again, a toothpick or bamboo skewer, whatever you have, and you're just going to drag across the line, going down and up and down and up, and you end up getting these really cool little designs on your cookie. This is also a flood and flood technique, but instead of lines, you just put little dots around the edge, and then you take your scribe and you drag it in a clockwise motion and you'll get little hearts. So that's what I did here, is I just did dots, and then I went ahead and did a couple more rows and ended up making it look like that. And speaking of dots for the flood and flood, if you have a Christmas tree, this is a great way to make kind of inset ornaments. You just go through, put some dots, and they will sink nicely into your tree, kind of making them one with the Christmas tree. And here is one of Bailey's cookies, my daughter. She did the flood and flood technique on this tree. If you want a different look where you kind of have 3D elements, or you outline, or you add little features to things, and you don't want the flood and flood technique, what you have to do is go ahead and go in and fill in your cookies. So here I'm outlining the wreath part, I'm gonna flood it, then I'm gonna outline my bow and flood it, then I'm gonna let my cookie dry overnight. That is ideal. If you can't, you definitely have to let it dry for a couple of hours. Otherwise, if you put the icing on top of wet icing, it's just gonna sink into your cookie. Once my wreath was all dry the next day, then I went back in and just outlined my red bow, and I put some berries, and they kind of stuck off like a 3D element. Another tip is to think outside the box when it comes to cookie cutters. So here I've got a Christmas tree cookie cutter that I'm actually turning into a Santa head. A gingerbread man, you can turn it upside down and put a reindeer head on it. So once I got this Santa done, as you can see here, I've got the details done, and I wanted to share edible markers. If you are not comfortable with fine details, writing names with icing, adding little things, get yourself some edible markers. They work great for little details. So I'm going to be using the black one for his little eyes here, and then I'll go back in and add a little bit of white icing above to make his eyebrows. So there are a lot of options for those people who just aren't quite comfortable with the super fine details of icing. The edible markers really are a huge lifesaver. Another decorating idea for you is to just not fill in the cookie all the way. So for this one, what I did is I did my red stripe first using the outline detailed icing, and then I put the sprinkles on. Then I went in with the white stripes, but you could do this on any cookie. You could do little circles, you could do dots, add sprinkles. You don't have to fill in the cookie all the way to still make it look cute. Now it's time to talk storage and packaging of cookies. So if you're gonna eat these now, you can put them in any type of sealed container and leave them on your counter for about a week, week and a half. If you want to freeze them, you can freeze uniced cookies as well as decorated cookies. So what I do is I take Ziploc bags and I stick the cookies in a single layer inside the Ziploc bag. Once I've done that, I close it as much as I can, and I actually stick a straw in there and suck out as much of the air as I can. And then once I've done that, I just set this inside of my Ziploc container, and then I put it in the freezer. To thaw these out, you just take them out of the freezer. You're gonna wanna take them out of the Tupperware container, but leave them in the bag. Do not open the bag. Let them thaw all the way, and then once they're thawed, open the bag and you've got some delicious cookies. And finally, time to talk packaging. So Walmart has all of these cute little treat boxes that you can get to put cookies in. They've got different sizes that you can choose from. These were just some of the ones that they offered this year. They also have these little Ziploc baggies that if you want to send one in your child's lunchbox or send it with somebody, you can just put one in a Ziploc bag. A great gift idea is to take one of these treat boxes and to put some undecorated sugar cookies inside of the treat box, and then include sprinkles, and some piping bags. Wilton makes already made royal icing. They have it in this tub that you can get, as well as in the tubes. You could also include a fun little Christmas placemat. You could get one from the Dollar Tree or just something and let them use that as their work surface for decorating the cookies. So there's lots of options here as far as you can give it as a gift, or you can put decorated ones in a box as well, put some tissue paper in there, tie it up with a bow, and it makes a great little gift. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you find this video helpful in your cookie endeavors. Please comment down below and let me know if you plan on doing cookies or whatever you plan on baking this holiday season. Please give this video a thumbs up. That helps me out so much. I really appreciate it. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!